Thank you very much, Melissa. Today's big news leaves a lot of questions open. So to find some answers, we are joined by the editor-in-chief of the Tablet and Nuestra Voz, Jorge Domínguez. He is in the studio. And the national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, who's standing by in Rome. Let's get right to it. Christopher, we're going to start with you. This is quite a remarkable letter. What do you make of the Holy Father's acceptance of Cardinal Wuerl's resignation?
That's right, Liz. I mean, I think it's a mistake to say unprecedented on the Vatican beat, but it's rare, certainly, that a letter would accompany a letter of resignation like this. And I think it goes to show just how much esteem Pope Francis has for Cardinal Wuerl, and just how much of an ally he saw in him and how painful and personal this decision was for him to, in fact, accept his resignation.
Jorge, an interesting part of that letter states that Wuerl will remain in the Archdiocese as an administrator. Now, why do you think that the Holy Father chose to keep him temporarily in charge?
It is a very unusual move in the sense that we knew that, Wuerl presented his resignation 3 years ago. So you may think that, they have the replacement ready. I think it is another sign of the Pope's, personal esteem for Cardinal Wuerl, because he have done the same in Chile, but in Chile was totally different thing. They have the resignations of 5 bishops at the same time. They weren't ready to have 5 replacements, and they name administrators. But here is a total different situation. I think it is, again, another sign of the deep esteem for Cardinal Wuerl.
Christopher, in keeping with Jorge's train of thought, do you think this decision by Francis is a way for the Church to hold bishops and cardinals accountable for their handling in this abuse crisis?
Well, I think, Liz, that in accepting the resignation, he does acknowledge what Cardinal Wuerl has already acknowledged, was that mistakes were made along the way, and if he could go back, he would do things differently. At the same time, he distinguishes between mistakes, which Wuerl is in fact guilty of, and cover-up, which is the case that we're seeing in Chile and other parts of the U.S., which Cardinal Wuerl has not been found guilty of or even accused of. So I think the Pope is very carefully making a distinction here between that.
Jorge, could this be related, in your opinion, to Pope Francis's recent decision to conduct a more in-depth investigation of the McCarrick case?
Probably, or maybe at least, I mean, the Vatican just announced that there's going to be the investigation about the McCarrick case, and they are going to show a lot of documents that are related to that case. And we don't know, but of course, Cardinal Wuerl was his successor in Washington. So in that sense, it could be, like an announcement that there are going to be things about Cardinal Wuerl in those documents too. But at the same time, as Chris was saying, I think that in the mind of the Pope here, he was saying, this is not McCarrick. Yeah. I mean, it's a totally different case. Wuerl was a person who committed some mistakes. He was not an abuser. It was a very different case, and I think that was in the mind of the Pope when he tried to do this so differently from other cases.
I have to get this last question in, and this is for both of you. What message does the Cardinal's resignation send? What do you see the impact of this decision being? Christopher, I want to start with you.
Well, let's go back to when the Pope accepted McCarrick's resignation from the College of Cardinals. I mean, then we got the message that even members of the College of Cardinals are not immune from being held accountable. Now, again, totally different scenario with Wuerl, but we're seeing folks at the highest level having to suffer the price of not protecting minors at the greatest degree possible. And I think that's another step in the right direction.
Jorge, really quickly, the impact.
Well, the impact is for me, again, the difference between cases, but at the same time, this is another sign of the consequences of a culture that was in place and that we are trying to change after 20 years of scandals.
All right. Thank you so much, Christopher, and thank you, Jorge.
Thank you.
You can read more of Christopher and Jorge's coverage in the Tablet and online at thetablet.org.